Today we'll be talking about creating shared value, inclusive growth. These are words which are very important to me. It actually is practically the whole advocacy that we're trying to push in the Senate. It sounds like buzzwords, things na magandang pakinggan but you're not exactly sure what they are. But today, hopefully, throughout all of the discussions and all of the speakers, malilinaw sa atin kung ano ba yung ibig sabihin ng mga salitang ito. When you say creating shared value, you're actually saying that hindi na pwede na it's different from the business that you do. It has to be part of your business. Now, Nestle, I'm sure, will talk about their programs today and how they're creating shared value with their coffee farmers, with their different partners in different parts of the Philippines and all over the world. And in fairness to them, they're one of the companies who's really pushing CSV, or creating shared value, as a standard for even more companies to follow. When I usually talk to audiences and I ask them, do you feel that we are number 2 in Asia in terms of growth? Many of them will say, we don't feel it. No. Why? First of all, our unemployment is quite high. Napakataas ng unemployment natin. The highest growth in the ASEAN also has the highest unemployment. Our growth, in fact, I would say, is probably concentrated. It's concentrated growth. If you look at the years where our growth was the highest and the best, and we're looking at the last couple of years here, you'll notice that our poverty incidence, although it did not decrease as fast. This is a social justice issue. It's incumbent upon us, it's imperative upon us that if there is to be growth in the Philippines, we do all we can to make sure that this growth is felt by the majority and not just by a few. Through inclusive supply chains, through social enterprise, through creating shared value programs. I think that's really one clear way to be able to make sure that the benefits of the economy does get further down to where it's needed more. We need new models by which we can operate and connect our communities to our businesses, to larger markets. For people who are in the social enterprise, in the CSV space, pushing for more CSV programs, pushing for more inclusive supply chains, pushing and supporting more social enterprises, that's able to bridge communities and markets. Previously, communities would not be able to hit the larger markets. These are two separate worlds. And because they're two separate worlds, the value is not shared across the worlds. The value is kept to the markets and those who can engage with the market, and the value is not given to the communities, which is why they remain poor. They're the producers who are not able to access more significant markets. They're consumers who get the highest price in terms of goods and services because they're not able to connect to the markets. And Jollibee, much like Nestle, made a commitment to source locally and to include the small farmers in their supply chain, thus creating an inclusive supply chain. A lot of moves like that from large corporations, from medium-sized corporations, from multinationals and local companies are making a dent in terms of poverty and are making a dent in terms of pushing for inclusive growth. What does CSV mean? What does inclusive supply, what does that really mean? Para sa akin, these are new, creative models, solutions that are trying to solve our age-old problems. 15 years ago, we weren't even talking about creating shared value. We weren't, no? We weren't talking about, at least in the Philippines, we weren't talking about social enterprise. We weren't talking about inclusive supply chains. These are relatively new models that large stakeholders are going through, and sometimes with difficulty. It's not easy, with a lot of difficulty. But we're doing it because these are newer solutions to age-old problems. And I think at the end of the day, that's really the challenge for us. And maybe the burden for you guys. Kasi kayo na yung next generation, if not the current generation. We cannot have the same old solutions to our same old problems. We cannot. Because the same old solutions do not produce results. If the same old solutions work, we would not have these problems today. So it's incumbent upon us, it's imperative upon us to come up with new solutions, with creative, innovative solutions, new models, new ways of doing things, new ways of interacting with partners, new ways of dealing with each other, even new ways of sharing value. Because it's only by pushing for these new innovative solutions that we have a chance of solving our old problems. Now, Einstein famously said that insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. No? Paulit-ulit, inuulit mo yung same thing, pero every time, para kang loko-loko, you're expecting something to change. No? So for all the guys here, kung may nililigawan kayo, busted pa rin kayo na busted, you have to try something new. If you're doing the same old thing, malamang busted ka pa rin. No? Parang natamaan siya, di ba? So, you have to try something new. Because our problems are big problems. They're not small problems. Hindi siya maliliit na problema. The problems that we talk about are huge problems. And you need players, you need groups, institutions, you need people to support these solutions. We need the government, the private sector, large companies, the academe. We need everyone to be able to say, inclusive growth is the problem we need to face. We can't accept becoming a middle-income economy and still having millions upon millions of Filipinos who are poor. This is the best time for us to push for these solutions because there's money coming in. Our economy is doing well. But if we don't take that opportunity now that we're growing, we might end up 10 years later with a middle-income economy, and yet the divide between the rich and the poor is even bigger. No? We need to make sure that we push for these solutions. We need to make sure that we get large groups to push for these solutions as well. Kayo rin, no? Kayong mga change makers, you guys who are at the forefront of entering the workforce, you guys need to have these solutions at the back of your minds. Because if we want to move this country forward, we need to push for these creative and innovative solutions. And that's the burden on the leaders, that's the burden on the institutions, but I'm going to say this, it's also the burden on a lot of young people. Because I would like to think that you guys have the best solutions, you have the most innovative, the most creative solutions, and you cannot turn yourself off and say, bahala na, iba na may problema niyan. No, I mean, for God's sakes, this is creating shared value. If you think about it, this is not a sponsored event by the government. This is a sponsored event by Nestle. So ibig sabihin yan, even the private sector is already there. They're already at that point where they're saying, we need to have new solutions to these problems. And hopefully, by the end of this whole process, you will join us and say, definitely, the solutions are important, they're urgent, they're essential, but more importantly, they can be done, that these our problems can actually be solved, and if we all work together and share that value with more individuals and sectors and institutions, we'll be able to get past the problems that we've had for so many years. So let me end there. Thank you very much. Maraming salamat sa inyong lahat.
I guess how much giving is enough giving?
Yeah. Well, there aren't hard and fast rules. I'll leave the other speakers to talk about that. But the truth is, wala talagang hard and fast rule. You have a group like Human Nature who I think is on one side medyo extreme sila. Wala silang binabayaran na minimum wage. They pay practically double the minimum wage already, which I don't think a lot of other social enterprises could do to be sustainable, to be frank. But they're there on that side. No? On the other hand, say, Rags to Riches, for example, has a tiered approach. Yung mga nanays who are basically just weaving and they don't really work 8 hours a day, it's extra income for them. No? When they're able to provide the woven cloths, that's just extra income for them because they don't really consider it a job. But there's a set of nanays, and these are like the original nanays of Artois who've been with us for 6-7 years, we've given them scholarships to School of Fashion and the Arts, we've given them a lot of exposure trips, and now, when they make the bags and they're really artisans, no? They're able to design already. Some of their designs are at par with the designs of our name brand designers, and they're already getting, way more than minimum wage sila. Kasi na sila they've really upgraded. So, hindi rin siya patas for everyone. No? Depends on the work that you do. For Jollibee, for example, first of all, they increased their yield because of technology and because of new ways of doing things. They're not actually, Jollibee is not buying at a higher price than the market rates. But because they skip a number of steps in the supply chain, all of that value is captured by the community. So hindi rin Jollibee is not paying more. They're just paying the same market rate. But by deciding to buy from those communities directly, they're giving them more value. So it's not set in stone. But I think the best yung batayan talaga dyan is to see if the community is is happy and is growing and is evolving and developing. Because at the end of the day, the metaphor of the bridge is very important. Hindi na kayo magkahiwalay, no? You have to work closely with your community. You have to be part of their lives and they have to be part of yours. And I'm sure later the Nestle people will talk about that process of opening their doors also to the farmers.
Keith C. How about small enterprise business owners? How are they going to benefit in this new creating shared value scheme?
Yeah. Well, actually, most social enterprises are small enterprises. No? So, in fact, the law that we passed, yung Go Negosyo Law, which creates the infrastructure to support micro, small, and medium enterprises. Kasama na rin doon yung pag-support sa mga social enterprises, community enterprises. Most really start at micro or small anyway. So, by creating these larger supply chains or inclusive supply chains, by making sure that your products and services have an actual market, definitely small enterprises will be supported also.
As a senator, what is the government's current role in creating shared value for the poorest of the poor?
That's a good question. No? Earlier, we showed you the BOI dun sa markets. I don't know if you saw the BOI logo there. On the other side, you saw the 4Ps, the Sustainable Livelihood Program, etc., etc. One thing we're trying to do, and si Rapa and I have been very makulit about this, is trying to create that program where we incentivize the larger companies into having inclusive supply chains and having a CSV program. So the Board of Investments under DTI is the government agency that provides incentives, usually tax incentives or non-fiscal incentives to companies who are either setting up here or pioneer industry, etc., etc. What we've been trying to do is include in their criteria the inclusive business aspect, such that if they do have an inclusive business part, then they can get further incentives from government. That's pretty major, I think, because the Go Negosyo Law that we passed last July, it's my first law and it's my pet bill for our first year. This creates infrastructure all over the Philippines per LGU to create a negosyo center. In fact, tomorrow I'm inaugurating the Cagayan de Oro Negosyo Center. And that center is there to support your micro and small enterprises.